Welcome to the Zayari Wellness Podcast, where we learn about other people's journeys. Regardless of age, race, religion, or status, we're all just human and have one thing in common: the ups and downs of life. Join me in welcoming our special guest, Chaz, as we explore the unique struggles of being a single mom.
Hey guys, so my name is Chastity. I am joining Jocelyn on her podcast. So I chose to do the topic on single moms, just because I know that there are so many of us like out here that have went through this journey, and I know that it's some ups and some downs. And so some people are probably like, do you have to deal with this? Do other people deal with this? Is this normal? Is this
Mm-hmm.
like life? Is this what single moms really have to go through? So for
Mm-hmm.
me, I feel like it's very important for me to share my story and just kind of let you know that you're probably relatable to more people than you think you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that single moms are often sometimes looked over just because we're
Mm-hmm.
expected to be the sheroes. You know what I mean? We're expected to suck it up and move on. And sometimes it's just like, I mean, but at the end of the day, we have feelings too, you know what I mean? And so
Mm-hmm.
I just think that women, especially single moms and single dads, single parents, period,
Mm-hmm.
there's a special place for them, especially in my heart, just because going through that was something that I never wanted to do. But now that I did go through it, it's like I have a new appreciation and a new respect because it's a lot. It's a
Absolutely.
lot.
Absolutely.
So
So,
thank you for having me.
yes, thank you for being here. I love that you're open and vulnerable enough to shed some spotlight on what can be considered a sensitive topic. Because, anytime we talk about single moms, all you hear about is people either bashing single moms or single moms are just too much, or that you have
Mhm.
what baggage is what people call it,
Mhm.
which is, I don't
Mhm.
understand why people consider children baggage. I mean, I can
I do
get,
not.
maybe things dealing with baby daddies or baby mamas. So like, yeah, tell us a little bit about your journey of like when you had your child and what led you to be a single mom, what happened and how did you deal with it?
Okay. So I was actually I was a sophomore in college, graduated high school, made it to college, had been in college for about 2 years. And so, me and this guy that I was talking to, we met online, started talking. I met up with him a few times, and we, just it became kind of it stuck, right? So we started
Mm-hmm.
hanging out. We would meet up all the time. It wasn't necessarily anything that was like, um, I guess you could say official. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when you kind of invest your time in someone with someone, you kind of spend your time with that person only. I mean, there's just no
Mm-hmm.
title, right?
Right.
And so things happen, one thing led to another. And then, next thing you know, I'm pregnant, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So initially, I told him, I'm pregnant. Hey, um, I don't know how else to say it,
The
right?
awkward silence.
Yeah, it's like, I'm pregnant, kind of, letting him know my response. And it was like okay, well, I'm not really ready for a kid. And so
Okay.
for me, it was just like, whoa, because it's like, okay, well, we had been hanging out, I felt like I was starting to know him, we were starting to get on the same level, we were starting to get here. So for him, it kind of took me off guard when he said that, because it was like, whoa, like I didn't know that this is where it would be, right? But then again,
Right.
we didn't have anything defined. It wasn't
Mm.
an actual title, so I had to take it for what it was, right? But at the
Yeah.
same time, for me, I didn't believe in abortions. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
something that I felt like I want to do. I'm against abortions. It's, for me personally. And
Right.
so for me, it was like that was not an option. And so
Okay.
for him, it was just like, hey, well, I don't know what you're going to do, but I kind of don't want to have a kid.
Okay. Okay. So I think
And
let's really back a little bit because I think there's a
okay,
lot of people that find themselves in that position that like,
absolutely.
oh, we just have a fling or we have something going
Yeah.
on. It's not official, but we care for each other. So can you give like a little bit of wisdom perhaps on people with like how important it is to clarify a relationship and what it is?
before, I guess, like maybe getting a little bit too serious, or I don't know, like other steps so that there are things that are like avoided. You know what I'm saying? Not necessarily a child per se, but miscommunication and misunderstandings about where we're at in a relationship.
Right. I think it's so important, right? So for
Mm-hmm.
me it was like, okay, we're just kind of coasting it, and it was like, okay, he doesn't say nothing, I don't say anything, but I
Mm-hmm.
like him, he likes me, we're talking to each other, we're vibing, but we don't like we have never really had that in-depth conversation of what exactly
Mm-hmm.
that relationship was. And so for me, it was okay, I like him, I want to be with him, but I'm not the one to bring up the conversation. But I think that it's
Mm-hmm.
important that you have those conversations with that person, because then you end up in a situation of what you expect this person to be and
Mm-hmm.
the role you expect this person to play later on down the
Mm-hmm.
line. But the communication and the clarification isn't there because
Mm-hmm.
you never talked about it, you just went with the flow. And so
Yeah.
in my situation, that's kind of what happened. It was like I assumed
Mm-hmm.
him to all of a sudden become in a relationship and want to have, want to take care of a baby with me and want to
Yeah.
take care of and take on these life roles with me,
Right.
that I never really sat down and evaluated the situation for what it was, because maybe it
Yeah.
wasn't that. Maybe I
Right.
wanted that, but we never really had the clarification and we never really talked about what
Mm-hmm.
that relationship will look like. And so
Yeah.
for me, raising kids, that's not really what I pictured for my, my family unit, I guess you could
Yeah.
say.
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew that I wanted to have a family, right?
Right.
But at the same time, I know that when I got pregnant, abortion wasn't an option for me.
Yeah.
But I knew that if we never had this conversation, if he didn't want to take on this responsibility and this life role with me,
Yeah.
of what we never clarified,
Right.
it is what it is. And it's like, I don't want to put my son or my child or my baby
Mm-hmm.
through that.
Mm-hmm.
And of the feeling of him not being wanted or something like that, is just
Right.
like I have to set up the responsibility because I put myself in this situation, if
You
that
know,
makes
I kind of
sense.
I like that you said that, because I think there is a big divide, right? There's
There
a
is.
lot of
Yeah.
opinion about like, hey, if the man doesn't want to take responsibility and you want to have the baby, then you deserve everything that comes with being a single mom. But
Mm-hmm.
two people like made that decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of whether the person chose to or not, like two consenting adults made the decision to have sex, and a consequence of sex, right? Like, is having a
Exactly.
baby.
Exactly. And so for me, it was just like, okay, it wasn't just me.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, I laid down, you laid down, we did what we did. And at the end of the day, we knew what would come about if, for any instance, you know what I mean? We knew what would come about if that was the case.
Right.
So, okay, you were in the moment, but I knew the consequence. And I mean, granted, we all have pleasures, we all have, whatever
Right.
at the time. And
Right.
so, unfortunately, that overtook in the moment. But at the same time, it's just like, okay, I accept responsibilities. It takes two.
Yeah.
It's not just me. I didn't get pregnant by myself. Where are you? And so it's
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
common misconception that, okay, well, you want to keep the baby, that's on you. So now all
Yeah.
of a sudden I'm a single mom,
Right.
right? Because he
Right.
has say so to just leave because he didn't want the baby,
Right,
quote
right. And
unquote.
well,
You
you
know.
don't, and really, you don't get to have that choice. And I think we need to talk about the other side of that. Let's talk about the people
Mm-hmm.
that are like, we'll just get an abortion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if that was on the table for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You work in the field of like mental health and education,
Mm-hmm.
right? You work with
Yeah.
like women that are kind of maybe in the same predicament, right?
Right.
And I,
Right.
as a clinician, work with people and women that perhaps have had abortion, right? And
Mm-hmm.
what we don't hear on the other side of people that do have abortions is that I've never heard of a woman say, I felt proud to make that decision.
Yeah.
I've never heard a woman say, I was not affected emotionally by that decision. I've
Mm-hmm.
never heard a woman say that my body was the same after making that decision. And I think that people make it a very black and white thing. Well, if you don't want to
Mm-hmm.
maybe have the abortion, okay, so let's talk about the other side of it, right? The fact that
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have to live with the fact that you had an abortion for the rest of your
Mm-hmm. For the
life.
rest of your life.
And both of them have consequences. Let's be
Exactly.
honest. It's not
Exactly.
as easy as, oh, get an abortion, you'll be fine. Well, what about my body? What about my mental health? Perhaps your
Mm-hmm.
morals, right? That you
Mm-hmm.
have, that you perhaps put to the side to make that decision. And nobody's judging anybody here. Everybody gets to make a choice. But I don't think people recognize the long term consequences of both decisions of having a baby and getting an abortion. They both
Right.
weigh very heavily
Mm-hmm. They
on a
do.
woman. And I think it's easy for men to say, just make this decision. They're not affected
Mm-hmm.
by it, at least not to the extent that the woman is.
Right.
Like, I'm literally
Right.
having something ripped out of my body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if for the women that have had miscarriages too, that hurts. And it
It
happens
does.
naturally. And
It
it
does.
hurts emotionally and it hurts
Right.
physically,
Right.
right? Like, I've been there. That
I think
sucks.
that, yeah, I think the common misconception sometimes around pregnancy is sometimes people don't take pregnancy as serious as it is,
Right.
right? They think that, oh, bringing a kid into this world, okay, you're pregnant, okay, boom, you're gonna have the baby, okay, baby. Well, I've had two kids,
Yeah.
and one pregnancy was completely different than the other, but both of them are life changing circumstances,
Right.
right? Both of them are life changing situations that emotionally, mentally, and physically can kill you. You know what I
Right.
mean? And so sometimes
Absolutely.
I think that people kind of brush that under the rug as if, oh, you're pregnant, you're going to have a baby, you're going to have an abortion. Okay, cool. Boom, let's move on with life, right?
Right.
But until you're in that situation, really, you don't really fully grasp the concept that this is life or death. And
Yeah.
that's what pregnancy can be. And so when we talk about abortion, it takes a tremendous toll. Like, you're completely right. It takes a tremendous toll on your body, on your mental health.
Yep.
And, it can be rewarding, but it can also be discouraging at the same time, depending on the
Hmm.
situation. And so that's why they say when you're pregnant, a woman will always remember the things that she endured or the things that she went through, especially with
Absolutely.
miscarriages, abortions, having the baby, labor, right? All of
Yep.
those things play a big factor in, determining that woman and how she feels about pregnancy,
Yeah,
moving on and moving
absolutely.
forward in life.
And how did you feel? Like, was that even on? So let's talk about because unexpected pregnancies, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And I'm gonna be vulnerable about myself. I expect people to be vulnerable. I'd be vulnerable too. Okay,
yeah,
so my daughter who was born now, like,
mm-hmm,
she is less than 2 years. My son was not even 2 years old. Me and my husband had a whole heart attack. And mind you, I was on birth control, right?
no,
Like, I
no,
did prevent, right? In the best way that I
mm-hmm,
could. My daughter was a
mm-hmm,
birth control baby, and I would be a liar to say that I did not consider, dang, like, maybe I should have an abortion. I'm not even going to
mm-hmm,
lie. And that
mm-hmm.
is tough. That
Yeah,
is so tough
it is
because it's
tough.
like, economically, it's a big
It's a
shift.
big
Like, we're
thing. It
$800
is.
for daycare a month minimum, right? We're talking about not just daycare, we're talking about another expense. Now I have two little babies.
Mm-hmm,
My mental health, I had
mm-hmm,
postpartum with my first son. Those
mm-hmm.
are both big choices to make. And
Right,
I don't get me
right,
wrong, I love my daughter. Like, love
right.
her to pieces. Like, that's my baby now.
Yeah,
But you know, that is a tough choice to make. Even people that did prevent, right? So let's talk about, there are both unexpected pregnancies.
yeah,
And to make such an easy black and white, like, do I have it, do I not? In my case, my husband was there. Like, we
right.
both were like, looked at each other
Mm-hmm.
like, the first words that came out of my mouth, I'm not gonna lie, was the F word. That, I'm not even gonna lie. My daughter, if you watch this one day, I love you. I apologize. This is the truth, right? But I'm not gonna lie. So our circumstances were different, but for people to make it
Yeah.
such a black and white thing, oh
Mm-hmm.
well, you deserve
Yeah.
to be a single mom, right?
Yeah.
Like, or can you, and I think it goes back to clarifying relationships,
Right.
right? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
love that you said, now I have to live with the expectation that I had and the reality that is,
Right.
basically,
Yes.
right? Can you talk a little bit about that and how hard that was?
It was it was very hard. Initially when I found out, okay, so when you were talking about finding out that you're pregnant, so finding out, I've been on both sides, right? So I've been on finding out that I was pregnant by myself when I wasn't really in a situation, when I wasn't in a situationship, or
Hmm.
whatever you want to call it, right?
Hmm.
But then also coming to be finding out that I'm pregnant with my fiance, now fiance, soon to be husband. And so finding out when there was nothing really established hurt. It hurt like hell, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
One, because I had guilt. I'm not gonna lie, it was just like, I dropped the F word too, and I'm just like what happened? Like,
Yeah.
this is not how it's supposed to be. Like, I'm in school, and all these things
Hmm.
came to mind, and it's just like unexpected. And so when I had that experience, it kind of took me out of my body a little bit, it was, and I
Hmm.
did, and for instance, but then it was like, you know what? I had to bring myself back to reality, and it was like, look, you made this decision, you laid down, you put yourself in this. And some people may not have the maturity that I had at the time. Some people
Hmm.
may not have been, because my mama always told me, you do grown up things, you gonna have grown up consequences. And this
Yeah.
was my grown up consequence. So shout out to you,
Right.
mom. But it stuck with me, and so it was like, okay, look, you did your dirt, you gotta suck it up, and this is what you gotta deal with.
Yeah.
And so having to do it by myself was like, I didn't imagine this. And
Mm.
so it was like, dang, my reality hit me really fast. It was like, yo, he don't want to be there. He don't, want to co-parent and do this thing,
Mm.
that I expected him to do. What am I going to do? So it was like, yes, I did have to sit back, and I had to kind of weigh out the options and weigh out what was going on. But I just knew deep down that I didn't want an abortion. Now, had I would have went with the abortion, I think just like you said, I would have had to deal with it just as hard, but in such a different way. And so, like you said, thinking about the black and white and thinking about the other side, I still would have dealt with, feelings of however I would have felt, even if I would have got the abortion. It would not have been easier. I think that now that
Yeah.
I got pregnant with my fiance, it was still a surprise. It still was
Hmm.
shocking because it was unexpected. We weren't planning for it, but also we weren't taking measures against, just being honest, right? Being vulnerable. We weren't like, we were
Yeah.
already locked in. This was an established relationships. We had been together for 4.5 years, so this was like, okay, we're locked in. I knew that we were planning to get married soon.
Hmm.
I knew that we were pretty much secure in our relationship. And so for me, when I did find out I was pregnant with my daughter, it was a surprise only because we weren't trying, but it felt good to have support, and it felt good to have someone there, even in that midst
Yeah.
of, oh my God, that shock. Like, what did we do? But it felt good to have reassurance
Hmm.
and to have somebody there to kind of
Yeah.
ease it a little bit compared to the first time and the first go around. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen
So
both
you've
sides.
seen both
Yeah.
sides of the coin, which, I think is
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
nice. Yeah, to have. And so bringing it back
Mm-hmm.
to not having that support, tell us about your journey, like when you were pregnant and the feelings that you had knowing that he wasn't going to be
Yeah.
there,
So when
and
I
then
was
having the
pregnant,
baby.
I reached out. So even after we, go through the whole divorce, or abortion, whatever they. So tell him I was pregnant. I didn't hear from him, right? And so we didn't talk. I sent him messages. I guess he had me
Mm.
blocked. There was no response. It was literally, I was by myself. And so by this time, I was pregnant. I moved in with my grandfather because my grandmother
Wow.
was getting sick. And she had dementias and early stages of Alzheimer's. And so
Mm.
I left my apartment and I moved in with my grandfather because it kind of worked for both of us. I kind of needed a little support, and then my grandmother needed a little support, and he needed support. So I moved in with them. And so for him, it wasn't like I was completely there alone, but it was. My parents, are back in Killeen. I'm in Houston, by the way, for those of you who don't know. But my parents were in Killeen, so it was just like I have them, but they're kind of at a distance. So it was good to have my grandparents and to be some type of support. Um, he did not come to
Mm.
any doctor's appointments. So it was like going to doctor's appointments and where's the
Mm.
father? And does the father this? And does the father and 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 hey, the father
Mm.
and you know? And so for me, it's just like going to these
Yeah.
appointments and it's like they're asking these questions, but yet you don't see them physically here. I get you're doing your job, but at the same time, how's that supposed to make me feel,
Yeah.
But it was kind of discouraging
Hmm.
because it's like what did I get myself into? I'm doing this alone. I'm going to doctor's appointments
Yeah.
alone. They're asking me questions about the father. They're asking me questions. It's further
Yeah.
beyond his presence. It's his genetics. It's his, it's his hereditary.
Yeah.
It's his, all these things, right? And it's like, I couldn't really answer because one, he's not here. And then two, we had been together about 8, 9 months, but it wasn't like a full on relationship,
Hmm.
right? So we didn't get deep, deep, deep into those types of
Yeah.
things of conversation. And so it's further than just the
Right.
physical.
Hmm.
A lot of things transpire when you're pregnant, right? So
Yeah.
knowing those details and knowing those facts about your spouse, it
Hmm.
makes a difference. So having to do that alone, right?
Yeah.
And then also birth, it was easy because of prayer, right?
Hmm.
But physically being there, my
Hmm.
mom came rushed from out of town. I had such a great support system because I have great
Hmm.
friends, I have great families or family members, but really having someone there that was a part of what we created, it sucked. It sucked so bad because it's like it's not their responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not their responsibility to be up with me at night. It's not their responsibility. It's your responsibility. Why are you not here? Why do you get to take the easy road out? You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And so I went
Yeah.
into labor. When I went into labor, I called him. I texted him. No answer. Still. And so it was just
Mm.
like this is my reality. And that's when it kind of hit me that I am bringing in this
Yeah.
child and he's not going to physically be here. And this is what he chose. This is what I chose.
Yeah.
But, at the end of the day, during my whole pregnancy, I took this path of really kind of redefining my relationship with God. And so that was really what got me through
Hmm.
my pregnancy of being alone, is because I really
Hmm.
leaned on Him. I really found peace in Him. And so by the time my labor and delivery got here, I was at so much peace and I was at so much tranquility with the
Hmm.
decisions and everything that I had made. Forgiveness and all these things. It was just like I was so okay with it because I didn't want it to affect him when he was
Mm.
born. Because it does.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I was gonna share a little bit about that. So what people don't
Mm,
understand is that, when a baby is growing
mm,
inside of you, all of the emotions you're feeling,
you
everything,
are.
you're passing that down, and the baby can literally
Yes.
be affected genetically too when their brain is being formed, when they're so everything you eat, everything you feel, everything you say, and people I don't think understand I don't think it's taught enough that that's literally what's happening when someone is pregnant. But I kind of want to
Mm,
touch on grief a little bit because what you're
mm,
mentioning is a part of grief. And I want to kind of break the barrier that people think
mm,
that grief is just when somebody
mm,
dies. And it's not. Grief is a process that you experience when you have a
mm,
transition, a loss of a role,
mm,
a loss of identity, a loss of like an expectation that you had. And in your case, it was the loss of like, my kid is not going to
mm.
have their father in their life. So, can you explain how grief kind of played a big role in your pregnancy
Yeah.
and having
So,
to accept that?
and you're absolutely right, right? So, grief isn't always just death. You know what I mean? So, a lot of people have that misconception that grief is
Hmm.
only occurs when death. But I did experience grief, right? And I think that that kind of is what led me to be closer into my religion and be closer into that because at some point, I cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. And I cried and cried and cried and cried and cried because it's like, I was
Yeah.
into that denial. Like, no, this can't be my life. This can't be what I chose.
Hmm.
This can't be what I did. And then I moved into that anger stage.
Hmm.
It's like, why can't he just do what he's supposed to do? Why can't he just be here?
Yeah.
Why? I don't get it. I don't
Hmm.
understand. And so
Hmm.
it got to the point
Hmm.
of once I really fully took the situation for what it was, it gradually I was in a depressive state, but I wasn't too depressed because I knew that if I ever got to that point and I stayed in that place, it would not be healthy for my kid, you know? And so it was like I had to pull myself from that
Mhm.
depressive
Mhm.
state real fast, real again, I stayed in my word. I was devoted, I was doing devotions every day. And so I just tried to have this positive light, but experiencing that grief helped me because it made me stronger for when he did arrive. And
Mhm.
so knowing that I lost that and knowing that my
Mhm.
child wasn't going to have that when he was born, it sucked. It really did. But I knew that it was for the better, right? I knew
Mhm.
that no matter what happens, you know, I had to adjust to it. I had to move on and I had to make
Mhm.
it work for whatever it is. And staying in that place, it wasn't going to help me.
Mhm.
It wasn't going to push me further. It's going to
Mhm.
only take me backward. And so I kind of had to pray myself out of it, but I also had to do a
Yeah.
lot of the work, right? I had to really find myself. I had to really,
Mhm.
and this time it was a lot of self discovery too. If you want me to be completely honest, like it was like I found out things
Yeah,
about myself that I didn't even know,
absolutely.
but I didn't even know that about me,
Hell, I
but
didn't even know that about me.
you know,
Usually
it's
fine.
okay, and it was a really
Absolutely.
self-defining time for me, but it was so much needed. It was so needed. But I finally got to a place of acceptance, and I think that's where I am now, is that I
Yeah.
accept what I did, even though it's 7 years later. He's seven now, but I accept it. And, we may not be on the best
Mhm.
terms, but we're on some terms. But at the end of the day, it's just like I have this peace that
Mhm.
is just like, I'm not going to let it bother me, But it took me a long time to get there. It did.
Yeah. Yeah. It does, and I
No.
think people don't
Nope.
understand grief isn't linear,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, you're okay one day, the next day you're
Mm-hmm.
mad, the next day you're
Yep.
sad. Heck, you may be sad for a
Yep.
long time, and then you're
Yep.
like, this can't you go back and forth all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned forgiveness, and I
Mm-hmm.
know that you said, like, you forgave him, but how long did it take
It
you to
took
forgive
me a
yourself?
while to forgive myself. It did, if you want me to be completely honest. And I'm not going to completely say that
Yeah.
I'm not going to completely, if you want to be 100% honest, I'm not going to say that I completely have forgiven myself. I'm almost there.
Mm.
But even though I have a spouse, I have a
Yeah.
husband, I have a kid, I have two kids, I'm not going to say that I'm 100% there. However, I am probably like
Mm.
90% there, only because um, I still have to deal with him. And I still have to determine
Yeah.
how I want that
Yeah.
co-parenting relationship to be in a healthy way. And so sometimes, like you said, grief can be linear. So
Yeah.
some days, he's not there, he's not talking to him, he's not doing all these things. And then all of a sudden he wants to show back up. And so sometimes when those things happen and,
Mm.
communication comes back and all these things and all these factors play a part, it's like, why did I put myself in this situation? Why do I even have to deal with this? And so, like you said, it's linear. I can go
Mhm.
back to the anger. I can
Yeah.
go back to, to those things
Yeah.
of where I have to bring myself back. Okay, this is your reality. This is what it is. Don't let it bother you. Don't let him bother you.
Mhm.
You have a family now, communicate with him as needed, And so it's just kind of like now I have to
Yeah.
realize
Yeah.
that I made my bed and I lay in it, and so
Yeah, and I think what you're explaining too is like the concept
mhm,
of like acceptance, right? And it doesn't mean
mhm,
acceptance
mhm,
doesn't mean I agree, right? Acceptance doesn't mean that I'm okay with what happened.
right,
Acceptance means
right,
it is what it is and I'm going to roll with the
mhm,
punches, right? And I think with forgiveness, people also have the misconception that forgiveness is just, oh, like I'm
mhm,
okay and everything's okay
mhm,
and I'm happy, right? But I think people forget that forgiveness requires making a
right,
conscious choice
mhm,
over and over
mhm,
again. It's not a one
mhm,
time thing like
right,
acceptance, right? Because you do have emotions. You are going to be upset when
right,
you're seeing your child be affected
mhm,
by somebody's decision
right,
or indecision to do something. So, of course, you're not a robot. You're going to have to constantly make that decision. I'm going to choose to forgive and I'm going to
right,
choose to accept my reality. And, you know, let's talk about co-parenting. I think that is a funny topic
yeah,
sometimes, for the lack of a better term. It's not funny, but people have so many ideas of what co-parenting should look like, and I'm pretty sure because of what you're mentioning, you've been labeled as you take him away, you're trying to control or use him as
Mm.
a controlling thing. So you're
Yes.
nodding your head. Just
So
let's
all the
talk about
above,
that.
right? So this is my least favorite when it comes to having being a single parent is co-parenting. It is the hardest part. It is the
Mm-hmm,
hardest
mm-hmm,
part. It's the hardest part of having a kid. It's the hardest part of being with someone who you have to force to do things that you're not supposed to force people to do. You know what I mean? And so
yeah.
when we talk about co-parenting is on a mature level, two people who make the decision to
Mm-hmm,
parent, be there, support financially,
mm-hmm,
emotionally, physically, all the above, right? The child that you brought into this world.
mm-hmm,
And so it's kind of hard because you go from
mm-hmm,
single parent where you're doing everything by yourself to this person who now all of a sudden wants to come back into their life and now all of a sudden wants to have a say so and now all of a sudden wants to have all these things to say somewhat, right? And
mm-hmm,
making all
mm-hmm,
these demands, but as a mom, you go into protect mode or as especially as the primary
mm-hmm.
provider for the child, you know. And so putting
What do you mean by that? Because you mentioned financially, and you
mhm,
mentioned for a while he
right,
was gone, so you
yeah.
were the only one making choices. So, what do you
So
mean? Like, what made you
for
protective?
me being protective over him is the fact that financially I provided for him. I pay for clothes, I pay for shoes,
Hmm.
I pay for daycare, I pay for everything. And I did. I
But you
chose to
chose to
have the
have the
baby. But
baby,
guess what? I
right?
took care.
Like,
Yeah, that's what they say. But
that's
guess
what people
what? I
say.
chose to have the baby. So I did choose to take on those responsibilities, right? You chose not to be there. Okay, that's fine. But now that
Hmm.
you come
Hmm.
back, that requires you to be a parent. And all of those things that I just mentioned are required of you
Hmm.
as a parent. I didn't complain when I was doing it, you know?
Hmm.
So for you to come back and all of a sudden want to be in
Hmm.
his life and want to be there, but you're not doing the things that are required of a parent, you can't, it's not just that I'm gonna call him when I get ready, I'm gonna talk to him when I get ready, because then you're starting to affect him emotionally. And what people don't realize is that lack of absence, lack of physical, like
Hmm.
being there for someone or being their presence for that child,
Presence.
that affects
Hmm.
them emotionally. It affects them. I'm
No,
not,
but you're a bitter
I'll
baby
take it.
mama. You're just a bitter
I'll
baby
take
mama.
it.
you're bitter because y'all ain't together, and you
And
have
that's the thing.
expectations and standards of a
Because
parent.
because women hold, that's the stigma, right? So when we talk about bitter baby mama, let's talk about the stigma that goes with it. Right? So we're bitter because we want the
Yeah.
best for our child. We're bitter because we don't want you to come back and forth. We're bitter because we don't want the instability. We're bitter
Mm,
because we don't get to let you do what you want to do while you get to go out and do what you want to do
mm,
when you want to do it. While we're at home
mhm,
taking care of the
mhm.
kids, brushing the teeth, staying up at late at night when they're sick, right? That's us putting our boundaries around our household and our children and our family that we have. It's not being bitter. And I think that's the stigma and
Yes.
that's the thing that people don't know. When we talk about bitter baby mamas are those baby mamas maybe that want to be with him and he don't want them, and so they're keeping the kids, and it's that baby mama drama, right? But when you're dealing with a mature woman, when you're dealing with a
Mhm.
mature mom, when you're dealing with a family oriented mom and a parent, you'll understand the difference. And so there is a difference
Yeah.
because those baby mamas and those bitter, right,
Mhm,
that comes with drama. When you have a parent who's really focused on their
mhm.
family, when you have a parent that's really focused on keeping their household together and keeping that unity, they don't care about all the extra. They care about being that best parent, being the
Yeah,
drama free, stress free. Like, because trust me, if you're dealing with a mature mom, that is the
absolutely.
least of their worries. They don't even have time to deal with any of that other mess. Like, we're changing diapers,
Right,
yeah.
like,
Like,
my life
we're
is not
not like,
revolved
yeah,
around
so much stuff
you.
going on. We don't even have time for that. You know what I mean? And so it's just like that stigma, like
Right,
it has to
right.
go. It has to go, because that's what they're labeled. That's what we're labeled
Yeah.
as, and it's really not the case. And it's sad that that's
Yeah.
what it is,
So you're saying having standards makes you
basically.
look bitter, is what you're saying. Like, so you're saying, hey, you can come around my son, just be consistent,
Yeah.
just be present, right? Like, so, I don't think, and we're
Right.
both,
Right.
therapists, right? You're,
Hmm.
I work child welfare. I definitely have seen the effects
Hmm.
of absent parents on kids' lives,
Hmm.
whether it's consciously absent or absent by divorce,
Hmm.
absent by
Right. It
separation.
do.
Like
It
it
does.
all affects the kid, period. You
It
know,
do.
kids need consistency. And so when a child is being told, I'm going to call you for your
Hmm.
birthday, and you don't make that phone call, the message that the child receives, because their brain is not fully developed and mature
Hmm.
yet, is I'm unlovable. When a parent says, I'm going to do this, and they don't fulfill that expectation, it shows me as a child, again, because my brain is not mature,
Right.
adults are unreliable, right? And it does affect the child emotionally. So, can you talk a little bit about that and what you've
Yeah.
seen
And
the
so,
effects to your child
yeah,
as a result
I
of
like
a
that
parent that
you
has been on and on?
I like that you said that, right? Because I think a lot of people don't understand the effect that a parent has on a child, right? And so when we talk about, I'm sorry, I'm a therapist, levels of development, right? You have trust versus mistrust. So you have parents who really kids learn by the presence of that parent, right? They learn to trust the world. They learn to trust the things around them based on the reaction of the parent, right? And so when we talk about that and we talk about the parent being absent, it's more that you're teaching that kid than just, hey, I'm here or hey, I'm gone, right? They're learning to trust the world around them. And if you're the very
Yeah,
first person that they can't trust, who else what other effects do you think that they're going to have later on in their life, right? And so for me, it's like I didn't
exactly.
want to have that be the situation. But at the end of the day, for me, it's like you're absent, right? But your absent means a lot more to him emotionally. I have to deal with him asking questions now of why doesn't dad call me? Or when can I see him again? Or where is he? Or, and so for
Hmm.
me, in my current situation, it's a little bit different because now I have to explain to him that he has two dads. When is that really supposed to be the
Yeah.
way? You know what I mean? Is that what it's supposed to be
Hmm.
like? So I have to now not figure out, but I prayed on it, right? But I have to now have this whole
Hmm.
conversation with him of the family structure and how that family structure was created
Hmm. Yeah.
and why the family structure is the
Yeah.
way that it is. And so now that you only see dad
Yeah.
or your biological dad once every blue moon, right? But yet you have another dad or a stepdad that's here
Hmm.
in your face every day and treats you like his biological son. Now you're confused. And so
Hmm.
it affects him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the fact that he doesn't understand it. He's still young, he's 7. So we do
Hmm.
have a little more time, but it's starting to have
Hmm.
those conversations and it's starting to see, okay, I have two
Yeah.
dads and other kids have one. I have, this and
Yeah.
so they start to put pieces together and they start to, put things together and so it's like,
Yeah.
okay, now I have to make sure that he is understanding of the things that what's going on
Yeah.
and the things that
Of
have
what's
happened
going
in his
on.
life.
Yeah. Absolutely. I don't think people realize, and this is not
Right.
to bash
Exactly.
dad, right? Like at all. This is just to promote awareness for the effects of, absence or non-absence in children's lives, because then you have to deal with the delicate balance of how do I tell you about your father without painting a negative mental image for you, right? How do I tell you something without ruining your perception of your dad, right? And it's like a song and dance, a delicate balance. And I don't want people to think that it's just perhaps the absence of a parent that affects a child. Because let's talk about divorce. I had a stepdad growing up since
Hmm.
I was 5 years old, right? And my parents, we moved to the
Hmm.
US. I'm from Puerto Rico. And when we came to the US, my dad was in Puerto Rico.
Mm,
My dad was my best friend. Emotion, I call him all the time. We were together. But guess
mm,
what? It wasn't until I was an adult that I realized I
mm,
had abandonment wounds from
physically
my
present.
father not being
Mm,
physically present in my life. I saw him on the major holidays, the summers.
mm,
And if you ask me, he was my hero, right? But again, as an adult, I started looking at trends. I started looking at patterns. And I was just like, dang,
mm,
I have abandonment wounds. I
right.
have like working for the foster system. I have emotional
Yep.
wounds that foster kids deal with because I had a perhaps emotionally absent mom and a physically absent father.
Mm-hmm.
That is tough
Yeah.
to accept, right? So I don't want people to think that it's just, oh, like single households deal with this. It's more and it's beyond that. And I think as a parent, it's hard, like you said, to like kind of swallow that, and say, yeah, like I put myself in this position and then I also put my kid in this position as well. And I don't think we think about those things when we're out there just having a good time, right? Like, can you explain a little bit about how hard it's been for you to have that balance of like, how do I nurture my son,
Mm-hmm.
protect the dad, right? And like be vulnerable with him and tell him like, hey, sometimes adults make mistakes. Cause I think this is a good opportunity
Yeah.
to show, hey, we're
Yeah,
human. We make
no. And
mistakes.
so for me, this is my boundary. My boundary, so one, boundaries are important, right? When it comes to emotions, when it
Hmm.
comes to what you talk about, what you don't talk about, when there's a lot of things, but also being vulnerable is also the key. So you can you can have boundaries and you can also
Hmm.
be vulnerable at the same time. People don't think that they go together, but they do.
Absolutely.
And so for me, it's like
Hmm.
I don't talk bad about his dad ever to him. That's my boundary. I
Hmm.
don't, I don't bash him.
Hmm.
I don't say this. I don't say anything negative about his dad to him directly, right? And that's strictly because I want my child to develop his own perception of who his dad is, of his character, of whatever he thinks about his dad on his
Hmm.
own, right? And that's strictly,
That doesn't sound like a bitter baby mama to
I
me.
mean, like,
Sorry.
I'm
I
trying
have to
to,
point that out.
like, I had to be against the stigma, like, you know? And so for me, it's like I don't. And so for me, a lot, I think it does throw a lot of people off because they're like, "You supposed to be mad? Y'all not together? Like
Mhm.
y'all not like you're supposed to be mad?" And so for me, it's like, no, I've matured. Back then, I was young. I made bad decisions, but at the same time, over time, I've matured and I had to look at situations differently. And so, I'm not going to talk bad about him because what we did is
Yeah.
what we did 7+ years ago, right? The decisions that I made is yes, it affects my entire
Hmm.
life, but I made those decisions 7+ years ago. And so for me, it's like I'm not going to bash him. He made his
Yeah.
decisions. He said his things. He did his piece. It is what it is. I can't change it. If I could change it, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in now. But at the same time, it's like
Right.
I have to balance that because it's like, oh, I have all these feelings inside, but I really can't say what I want to say because, yeah, like,
Right. You start
oh,
twitching. Like,
oh.
hold on.
But
Wait a minute.
I also create boundaries, and so with my son, when I talk to him about it, it's a nothing's off limits, and so for him, it's like whatever questions you
Hmm.
have, ask them. Whatever you want to know, talk to me about it. However you're
Hmm.
feeling, talk to me about it. And so for me, just having that open book and having that questionable case, and he has, and so sometimes I didn't know how to answer it. And so maybe
Hmm.
I'll think about what I should say, or not
Hmm.
necessarily because I want to fabricate this answer, or this make me look good, but I do want to be able to be vulnerable and answer, the questions because he deserves to know answers. He deserves to know. And so for everyone that's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's grown folks' business. Oh, well, my grown folks' business that I chose to engage in 7+ years ago now affects him, right? You know what I mean? And so
Yes.
now he has to deal with that
Yeah.
growing up. And so
Hmm.
for me, it is very important that we have to be vulnerable, and
Absolutely.
I am open book with him because now he doesn't know all the, how, all these things, but there's boundaries, right? But at the same time, it is an
Yeah.
open book. And I think that when
Yeah.
parents have that relationship with their kids and when parents begin to establish that relationship with them as they're growing up, it makes such a big difference on their emotional
Hmm.
stability because now they're like, okay, I can get clarification.
Absolutely.
I don't have all these unanswered questions. I know what happened. I know why this happened. I know this, and so they can kind of start their own healing process in their own way because they need healing too. Not
Yeah,
just me. They need healing from the situation too.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah. You know what? Like, I just want to point out how you were just like, I'm an open book and I share with
mm-hmm,
him what's appropriate, because some people, perhaps in your position, being a single mom, like
mm-hmm,
your child is all you have.
mm-hmm,
So you grow
mm-hmm.
that bond together. You're spending your
Right.
whole entire time together.
They
And
do.
sometimes the lines get blurred
Mm-hmm,
between I'm your parent and you're my little best
mm-hmm.
friend and I tell you everything, right? And
Yeah.
it creates like an
Yes.
unhealthy codependency, which is,
Right.
I
Right.
need you for my emotional fulfillment. And I don't think
Mm-hmm.
people realize that there's a very fine line,
Right.
especially with being a single parent and when you're having a child,
Mm-hmm.
withdrawing that boundary of, you know what, it's not appropriate for me to share my
Right.
anger and those feelings that I
Right.
have, with him
Mm-hmm.
about that situation. And so, can you talk a little bit about the journey after you had him and how hard it was to like just
Yeah.
have to do all of that, and the
Yeah.
importance of a
So,
support system?
um, after I had my son, I when I had my son, so when I went into labor, my mom came from Colleen. My sisters, everyone came to my side. My best friends that were here in Houston, I kid you not, I had like 15 people in the room. Ask me how it happened. I don't know. Everything just happened so fast, and it was just like, okay, you're gonna go. Yeah, it was just like
Everybody sing
at this
hoo
point,
ha,
I'm in
58
labor. Get
people in
baby out of me.
there.
Like you see, I don't care.
Right,
Like
they don't
it's
care.
get him out, and so it just happened all so fast.
Look,
Right? They don't. And so,
people don't get it.
listen,
People don't, at that
take a
point,
picture.
you're
I
just
don't
like,
care. Like
take a picture. Don't care.
at this point, like vulnerability, like everything just went out the window, and it was just like I don't even care, right? But it was just like I knew that they were
Yes.
there because they loved, they supported me, they knew my situation, but it was never shunned on. And so I think that's what I really admire about my family, and I really admire about my support system is yes, it's not
Mm.
traditional, right? Way of having a baby and all
Hmm.
these different
Hmm.
things, and we are, my family is Christian background, right? I do come from a Christian family, and so
Hmm.
yes, I had a baby out of wedlock. Okay, we understand that, right? But also with that, I really appreciate the fact
Hmm.
that they did not already, on top of what I was already feeling, they didn't make me feel it even more, right? They were very supportive.
Mm. Oh, so you're telling me you
Absolutely.
can be a believer and have
Absolutely.
faith and make mistakes too?
Absolutely.
What are you talking
No,
about?
girl,
No, you
perfect
have to be
where?
perfect,
Because it
girl.
doesn't
What you talking
happen in real
about?
life. But also, no sinner sin is
Right.
greater than the other, right? And so for me, it was just
That's
like
right.
I love that so much because that also helped me emotionally. Because going through everything that I was going through, and then on top of
Mm.
that, having to have a family that was like, oh, and then having to go through, that by myself because they didn't want to be there,
Mhm.
that it does.
It isolates you even more when you
Yeah,
were in
it
already
does.
isolating
It
position.
isolates you in more ways than you think, right? But I did. I didn't have to deal with that. I had very
Yeah.
supportive, a support system, a great support system that was there. My best friend stayed in the hospital at the time. Stayed at the hospital, overnight with me, and
Mm.
it was very supportive. When I came home, I went to Colleen
Yeah.
for it was almost 6 weeks, so I stayed in Colleen with my mom's with her, and I was there for
Mhm.
6 weeks. So it was very important that I had that support system. They were there behind me. They were, now I'm going to say this: they didn't condone what I did, but they supported me. Right? They didn't shun me, but at the same
Mhm.
time, they understood.
Mhm.
We
What? People
can
can have a difference of
absolutely,
opinions and
but
be
that's all a part of
supportive of each
growth. That's
other
all a part of
in
growth. Because if you
America?
don't have people who can grow with you,
What?
where are you going? How are you growing? Right? And so we had a difference of an opinion. Yes, I
Mhm.
don't condone, what you did, but at the same time, I
Mhm.
support you. You're my family. I love you still. I understand that was a decision that you made. It
Absolutely.
may not have been the right decision, but you still made that decision. And now this is something that you have to live with. But at the same time, I love you. I support you. I'm here for you.
Mhm.
Right? And that's normal. That's normal.
Absolutely. I just
It's
want to give them the
normal.
kudos. Because let me tell you, look, in
Yeah.
most
Yep, they do.
minority
And they
household, to be
do.
like, get out the house,
And
don't
they
come over
do. And they
here, you
do.
did it. you
They don't, and
know, don't
I
ask
think
me
that
for
that's
help.
a negative thing that does happen in minority households, because that's why majority of minorities are in poverty, living in poverty. That's why majority of no, we don't,
We don't help each other out.
we don't
We don't. You know, I love like one culture that I
listen,
admire a
because
lot
they're
is the
gonna help
Indian
somebody.
culture. They will literally live
They
together.
will pay off
Families
our
will
whole
live
house.
together, pay off a whole
Exactly.
house, and say, "Where are we moving to next?" So that we can
Listen,
like
they
continue
do.
the empire.
Mansions
Like
on top of
we need to take
mansions on top of
a
mansions.
lesson or two.
Listen, they work together.
What they don't compete
Oh
against
yeah,
each other. I mean,
they
they do in
do.
business, but like they really support each other. And I think that's one of the big things that we're
Mm,
missing in like Hispanic and like
right.
Black and cultures is
Mm,
that we need to do
mm,
more, less
yeah.
bashing each
Yeah.
other
And I
and
think
more
also think
supporting each other.
it does.
But that goes into the history of
I
our
think that
cultures of we were put
a
against
lot
each
of it
other,
comes
really.
from our need to be in competition with one another. We have to have the best this, we have to
Yes.
look this, we have to look that. Oh, they have this, so I need this, right? And so there's really comes a brokenness between working together and competing with each other, because now we're not working together to build each other up. You could say, oh, I support you, oh, I this, oh, I that, right? But it's, oh, they got this, I need to get this, or I need to look better than this and I need to have this on, right? And so, and then also
Mm-hmm.
too, we put a lot of emphasis on materialistic things versus other cultures, right?
Mm-hmm.
They may not put a lot of emphasis on
Mm-hmm.
materialistic things, but you know, that's neither here nor there. But just having that support system, it really, really, really helped, because imagine if I did not. I could not imagine if I did not. If I did not have the support
Absolutely.
system, like I said, I'd probably be financially down. I'd probably be, and not saying that I had it all together either, because finances was not at the top of my list when I had my
Yeah.
son. It's tough having a kid,
It's
like you
tough.
said. It's like you
It's tough
already
when you
come
have a
out in debt.
baby.
I'm in debt in the hospital having you, like.
Look, I'm telling you. And for the people that are just like, oh, just, I like to make the argument, the other argument. I'm the devil's
Yeah,
advocate because I like both sides of the argument. For people that are like having abortion, I'm like, sometimes that may be the best decision for someone because I'm like,
baby,
you know
listen.
how much it costs to have a baby in the United States?
No.
Right? Not just the hospital bill. You come out in
Mm-hmm.
debt from the hospital bill if you have
Mm-hmm.
insurance, if you have the privilege of having insurance. And on top of
Mm-hmm.
that, then it's
Mm-hmm.
daycare, then it's food, then it's everything else under the sun.
Nope.
And baby, I'm middle class. I don't make enough to get assistance. So
Sure
guess
do.
what? I have to
Sure do.
pay it all out of pocket, right?
I sure
On top
do.
of going to school,
Yep.
paying my rent, paying all
Mm-hmm.
my bills, just like everybody else. So
Yeah.
like don't bash
Yeah.
someone on the other side either
You
because
don't
they
know their
chose to have an
story.
abortion.
You don't know.
You
Yeah.
don't
You
know
don't know. You
people's
don't know.
situations, you know? And so I think I want to touch on one more thing. So like you can provide
Mm-hmm.
some encouragement for others on this area, but you're gonna get married. You're starting and like
Mm-hmm.
a whole new chapter in your life. You had another baby. Like, how was it meeting your husband? And did he think that you
Yeah.
had baggage?
This is
You know,
probably,
like,
yeah, this is probably
talk a
the
little bit about
best
that.
part of my story, I guess you could say. Or just about being a single mom, period, right? Because the stigma is, or the mentality that a lot of people have
Mm-hmm.
is, you're a single mom, you have kids, and you come with baggage, or you have this, and you got baby daddy drama, and you got this and that. No man's gonna want to date you, right? And so, honestly, I'm not gonna lie. For a long time,
Mm-hmm.
I believed it. I did, and it was like, I have a kid,
Mm-hmm.
like nobody's gonna, they always want to have, their first kid with their wife when they get married, and they want to have this big happy family, and I don't fit that, and I'm not this and I'm not that, right? And so I dealt with that for a while. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was in the dating pool, and I was dating a guy here and there, and I dated some guys that even had kids as well. And so it was just like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is a lot. It's different because my kid comes first. And so a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times guys didn't understand that. And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm working, I'm trying to build my career. I
Mm-hmm.
went back to school at the time. So I was working. I was a manager at the time at a restaurant. So I was running a restaurant. I was working. I was in school, taking care of a kid, trying to gain my experience to add to my resume. Like, I was doing so much at one time, and it was like, I'm trying to elevate myself, but also I
Mm-hmm.
do. I'm human. I need a love life. I need a partner. I need a companionship. I need a spouse,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it was then when I realized that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of guys weren't okay with my son being first. And so I was dating, and
Yeah.
it was just like the common trend and the common thing was, you don't have time for me. You don't have this, and I'm trying to do this, and you're not,
Mm.
or it was almost like a sex game. Like, this is not that. I don't know what you thought this was, but this is not that. Like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so it's just like,
Mhm.
my priorities shifted all the way around, and it was just like it never aligned with a lot of the guys that I was talking to and a lot of the guys that were attracted to, that I was attracting, or that I
Mhm.
was, yeah, it's just
Let's
like,
Netflix and chill.
no.
Let's let me come
No, this is
over
not
and
what that
like just hang
is,
out.
baby goes to bed at 7 o'clock. Like, there's no Netflix and chill. Like, I want my bed
Right.
to myself and my TV to myself. Where I have to clean up his toys, I have to fix dinner and lunch for
Yes.
tomorrow. Like, that's not what this is. And
Mhm.
so I met my husband. I actually took a hiatus. So I kind of deleted social media. I wasn't
Mhm.
active. I wasn't anything. And so, I did a little soul searching. And at this time, I just kind of really was
Mhm.
like, look, I'm going to set myself up for what it is that I want to receive. And if it doesn't come along, it is what it is. But
Mhm.
if it comes along, I know that it was because
Yeah.
that's what I wanted. That's what I told God that I wanted, but also that's what I set myself up to receive. And so I kind of was like, okay, this is what I
Mhm.
want. This is what I want. This is what I want. This is what I want. And if it's not that, I guess I'll be single for the rest of my life. And I'm okay with that. But
Yeah.
after I did that for about 2 years, I moved. I got myself my own apartment, moved with my son. Me and my son were together. I was working, about to graduate. A lot of things are, I had just graduated, I'm sorry. And so by this time I was like, okay, I'm ready
Mhm.
to take that step again. And so started online dating. I met my son or my fiance through Tinder. And so we went to the movie. We did. So we went to the
Tinder.
movies.
You
I
meet people
did.
online.
But when you're, but
Some people, there's
there
a
is.
negative
It's
stigma
like,
with that too. But
but honestly, I know so many people that have met people online, and you just you have to be
same.
cautious. You have to be
Yeah.
investigative. You have to be
Put on the snooping
investigative, but
hat.
you
You
also,
know.
you have a feeling, you have gut feelings, right? So you have to trust your gut feelings. And if you know that your gut feeling is telling you
Mhm.
no, no. You know what I mean? And so by this time I was just like, I'm just having
Mhm.
fun with it. Wherever it goes, it goes, but I'm not really like pushing anything, but I also know what I want. I'm dating with intention. And so
Yeah.
my fiance came
Yeah.
along, we started talking. And so our first date was to the movies. And so we went to the movies and we came back. We ended up sitting in the car and we talked about everything under the sun, the moon, the stars, everything, right? And it was like it
Mhm.
was so effortlessly. I told him about my son, and it was almost like every sentence was about my son. But you're a single mom, so you eat, breathe, shit your
Yeah.
son, right? And
That's
that's
all
all
you
you
know.
know. And so it was just like, dang, I'm talking about my son too much. And,
Yeah.
he was like, no, it's okay. Like, it's okay. I know that he means a lot to you. And so
Yeah.
for him to be so understanding and so accepting
Mhm.
of that and my situation and me
Yeah.
being a single mom, it was just like a breath of fresh air because it was something that I never got from God.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And just to be so accepting and
Mhm.
warming to the fact that she is a single mom. She's doing this. She's also has all these other things going on. She doesn't have the time, but she makes time for what she wants to make time for. She made the time for me. You know what I mean? So I'm going
That's
to
right.
sit in the moment and I'm not going to pressure her. And so for that, it was just like he really swept
Yeah.
me off my feet, and it really made me realize that, wow, you know, even though I do have a kid, even though I claim I have this baggage, as people say, he's not really baggage. It's just the right person has to
Mhm.
come along and be able to accept your
Mhm.
circumstances and live with that. And if he doesn't, then he may not be the one for
Absolutely.
you. And so he
Yeah.
does not.
Now, does
He
he
had
have
a
kids?
niece. Yeah. So, and
Look
he
at
even
that.
told me, he said he told himself that he honestly didn't want to date
Yeah.
a woman with kids. And so for me, it was just like, well, I do have I have a kid, so and so he was just,
You're like, well,
and so he
take it or
was.
leave it,
It is possible,
So it is
and so even with that,
possible.
it was
It
possible
is
because
possible.
we kept talking, and one thing led to another, and I'm gonna get married, so
Hey,
it's
girl.
all about
I love it.
who the person is and how they choose to accept your circumstances. But then again, I had to make sure that I was all together
Yeah.
before I can even step out there to even try to date again.
Well, I want to give you your
Thank
kudos too, because you finished
you.
school, you got your stuff taken care of,
It's
all of that,
not.
being a
It's
single
not. And it
mom,
was
it's not
hard.
easy.
I
You know what I'm
cried.
saying?
I
And
fought the air so many times.
yeah. I'm telling you, these kids, people, it's funny. I tell the story that like you really don't know
You
all your
don't.
flaws until you become a
Mm-hmm.
parent. Two
Yeah.
decisions. When you get into a very serious relationship, when you be
Mm-hmm.
in a very like for a long time. I'm not talking about,
Yeah.
these short, no.
Yes.
Make it past like
Yes.
3 to 5 years, like that.
Yes.
When you're committed to
Yes.
someone, it
Yes.
will bring out all the crap in
It
you.
will.
And having kids,
Man.
those are the two
Yes.
biggest
And
things that will make you know
even
about
being
yourself.
with my fiance and having my daughter, I learned some more stuff about myself because I was a single parent. And so what I say went. How
Hmm.
he does this, what he says this.
Oh no, you got to give now, girl.
And
You
so
got to. you
yes,
you
yes.
had to
And
learn to step back.
that was our biggest
It's
thing
hard.
when we had our daughter is I have to take a step
Hmm.
back. Like I have him here now. I have the support. I have
Yeah,
somebody. Like it's okay. You don't have to be super mom. You don't have to be hero, shero, whatever you want to call it. Take that step back
absolutely.
and you don't have to do it. So it turned all the way around.
Yeah.
So
Well, are you telling me it's possible to be
absolutely. Do you know what that means?
INDEPENDENT and also be loving and also be caring and also be
Yes.
nurturing to your husband? Like, because people don't think the two can coexist. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
look, I'm the
Yeah.
CEO of my company, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I have a whole business. I went to school.
Mm-hmm.
I run
Yeah.
stuff. I was by myself for a minute, right? And
Yeah.
I am A-type
Yeah.
personality, but my
Yeah.
husband will tell you that
Same.
I'm an awesome wife, right?
Same. It is possible. It's
It's
very
possible.
possible. Like, you just have to find the balance, and being going to school is not for the weak.
Absolutely.
All the requirements for that is not for the weak at all. But again, he takes control when he needs to take control. I'm independent. I go out and I do my own thing, but
Absolutely.
at the same time, I'm not loving, submissive. I just love to be that caterer to him
Yeah.
when I'm able to, and as a part of our
Yeah.
relationship. So it's very possible. Kids don't take that away from you as a woman. So
Yeah.
it's okay.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you coming on this podcast today. I really enjoyed our time. If there is one thing that you can have the audience take away from our session
I
today, what would it
think
be?
that the one thing would be is that it always gets better. You know, um, don't live in the past because your past doesn't dictate your future. It may influence it, but it doesn't dictate it. There's always room to grow. There's always room to learn. There's always room to change. You don't have to be stuck in your ways, and you don't have to harbor or foster in those mistakes that you made in the past. Being a single mom is a rewarding, a challenging, and a uplifting experience, but it's also very good to see that the strength that you get as a woman and as a mother from that experience. So if you're going through it, if you've been through it, more power to you. Stay encouraged, stay loved, stay blessed, and keep trying because those little ones need you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Chastity, for being on here today. And
Thank
I really
you.
loved your
Thanks for
insights.
having me.